Hey everyone, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur. It is your boy Jack here, and this is just going to be a quick video because I was inspired by the recent discussions about who's going to actually be our backup goalkeeper or maybe third choice goalkeeper if it comes to that this upcoming season, because not too many fans have faith really in the guy Fraser Forster. Some people are really big on Brandon Austin, other people aren't so big on him, and plenty of people want to see the younger talents be used like Josh Keeley and Luca Gunter. So I thought I'd provide just my own video since Dave is celebrating his sister Sally Odd's birthday. We are going to be talking about Luca Gunter versus Brandon Austin and which one could battle it out for that third choice role. Alfie Whiteman is probably well out of the contention, it feels like at this point. Brandon Austin's just been given a new contract. So I think this is a relatively worthwhile conversation to be having about who is actually the better choice to have as a backup goalkeeper to Vicario in case of the worst possible situation where he were to pick up an injury. I'm not too sure if any of the fan base has that much confidence in any of the backup options that we do have. So I figured we'd talk about that for just a moment here. And if you can for me, smash that like button. Do get your comments in, whether you disagree with me. I do expect people will on this video. And please let me know what your thoughts are on the backup goalkeeper situation. But let's get straight into this one. First things first, I think we're going to address the Fraser Forster situation about whether he even is the backup goalkeeper. I question that actually because Ange Postecoglou hasn't really made much mention of him, even when it comes to the injury updates. It seems like he even practically forgets about Fraser Forster. The last injury update that I got from Ange that I can recall was around like July 18th or so when he said that, yeah, he's not going to be part of the group because he still is dealing with kind of the repercussions of the late injury and will still take some time, and we haven't really got much update on it since. And so we've been watching Brandon Austin and Luca Gunter and Alfie Whiteman playing, and I wonder if these guys are going to be tipped, considering Fraser Forster's age, and he's only going to be around the club for so much longer. If these guys, if they're being given practically a trial run as to whether they can displace a Fraser Forster or be seen as basically the main backup choice goalkeeper alongside him behind Vicario. And I think with Fraser Forster, he came in, he did a great job in kind of showing what we were missing with Hugo Lloris. Hugo Lloris always had those cat-like reflex abilities, but those started to wane, I think, with his age. But then the big issue with Lloris was he just wasn't good at playing out from the back. And even under an Antonio Conte system, we needed someone that could handle, a pass to the goalkeeper and could be able to play out from the back under some pressure. And Lloris was just incapable of it. We actually started conceding some goals, I can remember, because of the lack of ability that he had with the ball at his feet and him either just ballooning it out of play that led to some dangerous counterattacks or him just conceding possession far too easily from very little pressure at all from a back pass. And it took him a long time to even get it under control after a first touch in a lot of situations. And Fraser Forster came in and showed that he actually wasn't too bad with his feet, and we were really benefiting from it. And he didn't make too many mistakes, I think, when it came to his shot stopping skills, apart from maybe the AC Milan tie where he was forced to play because I think the injury. I think Forster did not really do too well in the one goal that ended up being scored in that tie. But for the most part, I don't remember too many mistakes shot stopping wise from Forster. And he ended up being a lot better, like I said earlier, than Lloris with the ball at his feet, at least in my opinion. But if you were to compare Forster, I think, to any of the modern younger goalkeepers that we watch on a regular basis, I don't think he really suits, kind of the playing out from the back sort of style. I think he just happened to be better than Lloris, and we were taking advantage of that with when it came to the ball at his feet. And I think he's a good influence in the dressing room, Fraser Forster. I think that was part of the reason why we brought him in the first place. And he does have that sort of friendly type influence in the squad. My problem with that is, though, is that it feels like Brandon Austin as well as Alfie Whiteman sort of occupy that role of being homegrown kind of pawn type players in the squad that are just nice guys, really, pleasant people it looks like to be around. Brandon Austin seems to be a well-liked member of the dressing room. Alfie Whiteman seems like a cool guy that I would assume would also be kind of seen as a good vibe sort of player around the dressing room. And how many of those do you really need? You would think you would only need one, if not, barely any at all in the dressing room. It is supposed to be, a serious competitive squad. And it felt like we have, last year, just three goalkeepers behind Vicario that just weren't really, I think, in any way that close to Vicario's level. And also, all of them just seem to occupy this sort of nice guy role as the backup goalkeepers in the squad. And I think we should only really have about one of them in the squad, if not, none at all. And Brandon Austin, I'm fine with him being that player. Whereas with Fraser Forster, with him kind of growing in age, don't really see the point of having him around the squad if that's really his role, unless I'm totally mistaken and Ange Postecoglou does see him as the backup choice goalkeeper. I'm just not sure, so sure yet whether that's really totally the case with Ant. And you also wonder with Fraser Forster, he's growing in age and he's a very tall, lanky goalkeeper. And with that age in mind, I think we saw it in the penalty shootout against Fulham. It takes him a long time to get down to the floor or down to the ground. He ended up not being a penalty shootout specialist, literally whatsoever. And you then wonder, like, what's his real advantage in playing him, in these games because he seems to be losing a bit of the shot stopping ability as we saw through the penalties. But then also, is he really that much better with his feet than the rest of the goalkeepers either? I'm not too sure in that department. So I wonder what Ange Postecoglou actually even sees into someone like Fraser Forster anymore, which then moves us on to the likes of Brandon Austin or Luca Gunter, because I think Alfie Whiteman is pretty much out of the contention after Brandon Austin has been given that new contract. And when it comes to Brandon Austin, if he was ever good enough, I wonder why would Spurs have brought in someone like or like a Fraser Forster in the first place? You'd think if Brandon Austin was truly rated by previous coaches or even by Ange Postecoglou or anybody at the club, you think he would have been given more opportunities to go out and play with Spurs, or he would have been given more opportunities to go out and develop on his own out on loan. But we've kept him around as this homegrown pawn, but we've never really given him any loan moves either. And we kept Alfie Whiteman for similar reasons. And that could just be, unfair to Brandon Austin, or I wonder if there's really that much interest in him, whether people actually even do rate him around the squad or just in the game in general from other clubs. And so I feel like they would not have brought in someone like a Fraser Forster or even actually a very young Josh Keeley to come into the team if they didn't actually feel like Brandon Austin was actually good enough. If they thought he was good enough, I just don't see why they would have brought in a Fraser Forster or Josh Keeley. Josh Keeley. Maybe there is a feeling around the club that they kind of know that Brandon Austin sadly isn't really good enough. And in the little that I've actually seen from him, I don't think he's really been all that great. Yes, he's made some pretty spectacular saves in the beginning of this preseason, but we've also seen some pretty bad saves and some pretty bad moments from him as well. And I think with the ball at his feet, he looks a bit panicky at times. He doesn't come across as that much of a natural modern goalkeeper when playing out from the back. I think his first touch has been questionable in some of these situations when he's been put under pressure. And I've seen him balloon it out of play or end up actually hitting it out just recently for a corner when he wasn't really put under that much pressure, but clearly panicked when he was under that pressure. And I do wonder whether he actually even fits the mold of an Ange Postecoglou keeper, which is someone who has to be very good with the ball at his feet, has to also be a sweeper keeper. I wonder if even Brandon Austin has that in his repertoire. And I end up, questioning, some of his abilities actually too when it comes to the shot stopping department. And I can give a few examples here, and I'm going to put them up on screen. And plenty of people might think I'm being harsh here, and so they're welcome to disagree with me on that. But these are the very little examples. We've seen very little of Brandon Austin, so there's only so many examples we can work with. So I understand if this comes across as a bit harsh. I perfectly do. That impressed also by his shot stopping ability, and these are some recent examples. When you take yourself back to, if you ended up watching this game, the postseason friendly versus Newcastle United, the only goal that we ended up conceding was definitely from a Brandon Austin mistake here. And it was a Newcastle counterattack where they ended up kind of getting deep into our half here and they played a ball down into the box to Jacob Murphy. And you can see the situation that they're in here. It's a very dangerous one at that. But Jacob Murphy, you could argue, doesn't actually put in that great of a cross. He actually ends up hitting it straight into Brandon Austin's arms here. And Brandon Austin gets down a little late, you could argue, maybe not the most athletic, maybe of saves here or parries, and ends up pretty much parrying it straight into the path of Alexander Isak. And I know it comes across again as a bit harsh, but I think if you are going to be a quality backup keeper to the likes of Vicario, this is kind of one of those mistakes at such a non-pressure level. Like some of these games that Brandon Austin is making mistakes and aren't really in, high intensity situations either. And he's making some pretty high profile errors, at least in my opinion, that have led to some easy goals given away to the opposition. And this is one of them, I think, from Jacob Murphy's cross that he ended up just parrying straight into the path of Alexander Isak here. And I think that Brandon Austin should have done a lot better. You're welcome to disagree with me on that one. And then you look at the recent game versus the K League 11, where the first goal that we ended up conceding to them, I think is entirely on Brandon Austin here. It's a shot from a difficult angle to score from, if you ask me, especially from a K League 11 player. I would find it very difficult to score past a Spurs keeper if you are to shoot from here. He does shoot, and it doesn't really actually end up going that far towards the corner or anything. It's again, a shot sort of directly at Austin, a little bit to his right, and he takes a while to get down to it. And then once he does get down to it, he does again parry it straight into the path of the striker who's just easily able to tap it home. It's a very similar mistake, I think, to the Alexander Isak goal that we saw in that postseason friendly. So these are kind of two moments here. And again, we've only had so many opportunities to even watch this guy play or been given any action at all. He's made some good saves this preseason, but I think these are two examples of bad saves that I would question then his overall shot stopping ability for, that did lead to some very easy goals conceded for the opposition. And then he ended up, I think, playing a part in that third goal that we ended up conceding. The second one that we conceded to the K League 11, I don't think he had any part to play in. Definitely not his fault. But this third one, I do again have some question marks over his ability here because the cross is whipped in. I'm not sure if he necessarily needed to parry this or needed to come claim this. He could have tried to catch it, but then also I think, could have tried to parry this into a different direction or into a different area, or maybe even parry it more convincingly further away from his own goal. Because once he does punch this out, it ends up only going just barely outside of the penalty area to this player here who does make an absolute great effort of it from scoring. And Brandon Austin, for me too, after kind of punching it away, he takes a while to get up from the ground here to then recover back to a good position, be able to make a save if it is required. Because once he then reaches the player, he's very far out of his own goal, and it's going to be actually very difficult to make a save from this position. Again, it's a spectacular strike, but Brandon Austin pretty much leaves himself in a very vulnerable position. And the player does a really excellent job of shooting it over him and to his right once again into the goal. But I wonder, with Brandon Austin, is he actually that great with his feet? Is he actually that great of a shot stopper? I'm not too sure. And if he really were good enough, you wonder why Spurs have been so keen on playing other goalkeepers instead of him. For example, guys like Fraser Forster, and then also bringing in guys for the academy to eventually probably replace someone like a Brandon Austin in the case of a Josh Keeley. So that then moves me on to Luca Gunter. And with Luca Gunter, I'm not saying he's going to be a spectacular keeper or anything, or that he's really ready made or anything yet, but I wonder if he's not worth keeping around for this season as a backup to Vicario, to learn from Vicario. He's a young keeper. He can try to learn some of the abilities of a more modern goalkeeper like Vicario. I think Luca Gunter has already shown that he's might be the best behind Vicario when it comes to playing out from the back with his feet from the preseason games and action and minutes that I've seen from him so far. I think Gunter has looked better than Austin, has looked better than Whiteman, and probably is even better than Fraser Forster by playing out from the back with the ball at his feet. And I'd be curious what Dave has to say about it, because I know he's watched plenty of the academy. And I do think Gunter represents more of kind of the modern goalkeeper in the way that he's trained, looks less panicky in possession. His first touch is better. And in that game against QPR, he really was like trying to play out from the back and ended up having also a great throwing range. He led some counterattacks from quickly recovering the ball and then actually getting it out wide to some of our attackers to get a transition going. And then some of the passes he was playing out from the back were pretty risky, but he executed them very well and with confidence. So I'd argue that he's actually a better goalkeeper with the ball at his feet than some of the rest of the candidates that we have. And then when it came to shot stopping, he looked pretty good against QPR. And I think QPR is better opposition than what the K League 11 would be. I could be wrong about that, but I do think that they would be. And he looked good at claiming crosses from the corners. He made some fine saves to keep us in it. He was actually put under, you could argue, in that second half, more pressure than what Brandon Austin was put under in that first half against QPR. If you can remember the game that much in detail, I had to wrap my head around what that game was like. And I remember there was that spell in the second half where we were really put under pressure by QPR. They were trying to really go for the win, and Spurs held on thanks to what Luca Gunter was doing in goals. He was making saves. He was also trying to build out from the back to help us try to keep possession, not just ballooning it away every single time. And he did well to try to sustain that pressure. And so for me, Luca Gunter just embodies, I think, more of what we would want in our backup goalkeeper. You've seen guys like Liverpool, where they've had Kelleher back as the backup to Allison, and Kelleher looks to be more of a modern goalkeeper type of role. And I think that's good to have someone who would still kind of embody that type of modern goalkeeper as the backup. And I'm not too sure if Brandon Austin is one of those. I'm not too sure if he's actually as good with the ball at his feet, as good at some of the sweeper keeper type responsibilities, or even that much better of a shot stopper, really, than Luca Gunter. So curious what you guys think on this whole video. I'm going to try to keep it as short as I can, but I probably ended up ranting a bit too long. But let me know your thoughts on this. Is Luca Gunter a better choice as a backup goalkeeper to Brandon Austin? Should he go out on loan to develop? And if Vicario were to pick up an injury, I mean, we really can't afford that, because I'm not too sure if any of the options, even Luca Gunter, are necessarily ideal. But if you had to pick one, if you had to pick a backup goalkeeping option, who would it be for you? Is it going to be Brandon Austin? Is it going to be Fraser Forster, or is it going to be a Luca Gunter? For me personally, I think we just take the risk and let Luca Gunter stick around, learn from Vicario, and see what skills he can pick up and develop from the goalkeeping coaches, from Pat Jennings, from Vicario, etc., and see how he can develop in that type of environment. Whereas with Brandon Austin, I just think he's had plenty of opportunities to crack his way into the team and to make that impression with the staff and with the coaches. And I think there's a reason that he hasn't. But I'm going to leave you there, everybody. If you can for me, smash that like button. Feel free to let me know in the comments at any point if you disagreed or agreed with me. And I'll be seeing you. Come on, you Spurs. In the big Ange we trust. We never stop.